When you're staring at a glossy ad for a 6K monitor and wondering whether it's worth the price tag, the first thing that comes to mind is the risk of ending up with a gorgeous screen that sits on your desk and gathers dust because it doesn't actually solve your everyday problems. I've spent the last couple of weeks setting up the LG 32U990A in a home studio, a design workstation, and even a modest gaming rig, just to see where the promises hold up and where the trade-offs bite. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What follows is what I learned when the hype faded and the monitor turned into a tool I actually used. Let's start with the question most people ask: do I really need a 6K display? If you spend most of your time scrolling through emails, browsing the web, or watching movies, the jump from a crisp 4K panel to 6K is almost invisible. The real advantage shows up when you're editing footage that's actually shot in 6K, or when you need to see tiny details in a massive Photoshop canvas without constantly zooming in and out. In my workflow, the extra pixel density about 224 ppi means a single 19201080 window can sit comfortably alongside a full-resolution timeline and a color grading panel, all without the visual clutter you get on lower-resolution screens. One of the first things I tested was the Thunderbolt 5 connectivity. The claim that this is the world's first 6K monitor with Thunderbolt 5 is a mouthful, but in practice it translates to a single cable that carries video, data, and up to 90 watts of power. For a MacBook Pro, that means I could dock the laptop, charge it, and drive the monitor with one cord, no extra adapters or power bricks cluttering the desk. The same cable works with a Windows laptop that supports Thunderbolt 4, you just lose the extra bandwidth headroom, but the monitor still runs at full 6K resolution. The convenience factor is huge for anyone who likes a clean desk or moves between devices frequently. The built-in speakers are another point that gets a lot of attention. LG markets them as a convenient way to get audio without a separate sound system, and for casual listening they're decent clear enough for video calls and background music. However, if you're a video editor who needs accurate reference audio, you'll quickly discover that the two-channel setup lacks the depth and bass response you'd expect from dedicated studio monitors. I found myself plugging a pair of headphones or external speakers into the USB-C hub for any serious mixing work, which is fine but worth noting if you were hoping to replace a full audio chain with the monitor alone. On the upside, the DisplayHDR 600 certification delivers noticeably richer highlights than a standard HDR panel. When I played a recent HDR-enabled game, the bright spots popped without washing out the darker areas, and the color banding was minimal. For creators working with HDR footage, the monitor gives you a preview that's closer to the final output than a non-HDR screen would. The downside is the peak brightness. While 600 nits is impressive on paper, the panel struggles to maintain that level across the whole screen for extended periods, especially in a well-lit room. If you're grading on a dark studio, you'll get the most out of it. In a bright office you may need to dim the ambient light to avoid glare. Ergonomics are where the monitor really shines. The stand lets you tilt, swivel, and adjust height, and the whole unit pivots into portrait mode without any wobble. That flexibility is a blessing for developers who occasionally flip to a vertical layout, or for illustrators who prefer a taller workspace for long scrolls. The only hiccup I ran into was the weight. The 32-inch chassis feels solid, but it also makes the monitor a bit of a beast to move around. If you anticipate frequently rearranging your desk, you might want to keep a helper handy. Another practical aspect is the daisy chain capability. With Thunderbolt 5 you can link a second LG monitor and run both from a single cable to your laptop. I set up a dual monitor rig where the 32-inch sits as my primary color-critical workspace, and a 27-inch 4K display acts as a reference monitor. The chain is seamless, but you do need to be mindful of the total bandwidth. Pushing two 6K streams over a single Thunderbolt 5 port will max out the connection, so you'll have to compromise on refresh rates if you want to run both at full resolution. For most creatives, a single 6K panel is plenty, but the option to expand without extra ports is a nice safety net. Now, who should actually consider spending on this monitor? If you are a professional photographer, video editor, or graphic designer whose workflow involves working with assets at 6K or higher, the extra screen real estate and pixel density can shave minutes off your daytime that adds up in a busy studio. It also makes sense for Mac users who already own a Thunderbolt-compatible laptop, because the single cable solution reduces clutter and preserves battery life while delivering the full resolution. On the other